Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the session on initiating good research, idea to practice. Now, this is all about the basics of research. This is all about creating a right mindset for research. This is all about developing a culture to be in the pursuit of knowledge. This is what it is. And it is not talking about the very advanced methodologies or advanced processes or the in depth, what you call hardcore statistical packages. It is something where we are trying to be continuously, consistently, sustainably in the pursuit of knowledge. So we are just trying to see something which is good research. We are not talking about just attaining a research degree. So on that, in that context, this is something which any graduate or postgraduate student doing a research project, or even anybody who is not doing an academic program would perhaps like to look into in terms of how they can actually use research in the course of being in the process of resolving a problem. So looking around, identifying a problem, and then generating or creating knowledge to resolve, minimize, mitigate, or at least shed some light on that. That is what we are trying to look at in this session. So be with me throughout. All that we are doing is we are trying to see how anybody can create or have in them the inspiration to do good research, the mindset to be in the pursuit of knowledge, and continuously be in the search of new things which is going in and around them. Now, this is the purpose. We are trying to support young researchers right from graduate onwards in meaningful research projects. So it can be projects which are mandatory as part of their undergraduate or postgraduate program. It can be also projects which they on their own voluntarily take over in order to see that some of the theories, some of the models, some of the concepts that they have studied can find life in terms of application. So that is a basic purpose. Then the second one would be to create the right mindset for research. We need to have a right mindset for research, consistently and continuously being in pursuit of knowledge as visualized in the new education policy. Third one is to enable research based on real time, real life issues. In and around our campus, in and around our district or our state, there are numerous researchable issues. So instead of just cooking up problems, let us try and look out for real researchable issues and take them up for in depth analysis, do our studies, link up our theories to the same, and develop a true sense of research. So, this is what we are trying to aspire for. And this will be the coverage, as you have already seen. We are trying to look at research from a very layman's perspective, from a very grassroots level. We are trying to identify a research problem, how that research problem, which is so ripe, so robust around us, can be picked up. We are trying to look at how, in fact, there is a birth of a research idea, and then we are initiating a research proposal. So we are looking into launch of a research proposal and designing a practice plan, the methodological plan, how to carry it out, and understanding research outcomes. So this is what we are going to cover. Now, before I start, let me give you some stories of how some good research happened here and there. There was one Mr. Prakash who was a student in one of the B schools in Pune, and he used to be a very keen observer of something that was happening in a campus just opposite to his B school. There was an industrial campus where there used to be a lot of convergence of vehicles, both in the morning and the evening, and there used to be a huge traffic jam. Lots of vehicles entering the campus in the morning. There used to be long queues, a lot of waiting time, and he used to see this every day. And this student used to wonder how much of time is lost, how much of energy is lost, how much of what you call patience, human patience, is actually lost over this. And at that point of time, in their management classes, there was something called layout theories that was being discussed. And this student actually, out of his interest, tried to see whether layout theories could be actually used to have a good parking layout for this campus. This he took out as a project, executed it, and gave a master plan. And that became something which was implemented. This is a real life story of how something outside was well conceived, a problem outside was well conceived, and a theory that you learn from your school, from your college, is actually being used in order to resolve that. So there are even now numerous issues over which we need to have our ears and minds open on. It could be the street vendors, it could be the micro enterprises, it could be the marketing issues, it could be the project development issues, it could be also product customization, the waste around things, so on and so forth, which demands good research. So how are we going to go about this? How are we going to identify a researchable issue and link that up to what we have actually learned? This is a joyful experience of giving life to the theories around us. That is what we are trying to look at. And once you have this in your mind, then it is a day-to-day kind of journey where we try to keep ourselves in track of experiential learning, learning to do research, learning to do more and more knowledge creation in order to resolve real life issues. Now, what is research? Yeah, I'm coming to the first part of what we are trying to discuss. Now, I'm not talking about theoretical jargon. I'm not talking about definitions. I'm talking, as I said, right down to earth layman's perspective. Research is simply this: common sense with scientific backing, which is systematic, logical, and scientific. So it is the use of common sense with some scientific backing in a logical form, with some empirical evidence, with some backing into it, and you're trying to create something new. So that's research. So for that research, it is a basic myth that for doing research, one need to have a research degree. Now, I'm not referring to your academic PhDs. Yes, if you want to do an academic PhD, UGC and your university would definitely prescribe that you should have a master's degree, you should have 55% mark, you should pass a qualifying examination. I'm talking about the kind of research which people do where you are under a, what do you call, a very strong model of the mother being the need actually driving all your energy towards finding something new. So that is where we are looking at. So that kind of a research can happen. Say, for instance, the tribes in the forest, they know how to neutralize venom if a snake bites. So maybe from some root or leaf or whatever, but they have a methodology. And this is something which they have derived over a period of time through some kind of a learning. But they might not know the chemical composition of what they are applying. But still, there is a research behind that. Now, that kind of a research and the research that we do with the theories having two different dimensions. This is the kind of research that we are now referring to as a theoretical backing. And we are trying to believe that this theoretical backing will energize us further in the process of research. Say, for instance, the fishermen who venture into the sea, they also do some kind of a research. Say, for instance, they understand what it means when the wind blows in a particular rhythm, when the waves are showing a particular pattern in the way they rise and fall. So, although they are not experts in oceanography. So, what is important in research, even when you're doing it with theoretical backing, is your common sense, which is having a backing with scientific temper and logic into it. So, we are talking about that mindset. That means we must be in pursuit of knowledge. Well, you use all your theories, you use all your models, you use all your systems for that. But what is very important is the mindset, the culture through which you are actually trying to do that research. Now, look at this. Today, we are in a knowledge society. Now, many of you will be, because this is online, I'm not seeing you physically. So I don't know how many of you are perhaps graduates or postgraduates or perhaps research scholars and all. But all of you would agree that we are in a knowledge society. And a knowledge, we used to say we are in an information age. 40 years back when I was in my college days, we used to say we are in an information age. And we used to say information society, management, information systems. Everything was information driven. Now we are saying knowledge society. And this knowledge society is one level beyond information. And I think this is what I'm now showing you on the screen, something very simple. I'm trying to take you through a journey from data to wisdom, or trying to tell you that basic data at the lower form, from there you transfer this into information, you create information out of it, and from there you create knowledge. And when you create knowledge and wisdom, we are saying that we have researched over it. But definitely we are using data, which is raw material. We are using information, which is raw material. But your research product is actually the knowledge and the wisdom that comes out of it. And we are trying to be in the pursuit of creating knowledge, not creating data. We will be using data, we will be using information, but we are landing up with knowledge. Now, let us understand what this is. It's very simple. You know, data is raw facts and figures. We have tons and tons of data. We talk about big data today, data analytics, data science. So there is lots and lots of data thanks to technology. You want data on animal life, you want data on plant life, you want data on exports, imports, capital market, the shares listed, the values at which they trade, the exports that you make, the balance of trade that you have, the kind of vote banks which exist in each region, the distribution of our population, the migration that has taken place, the investment and savings that is happening. Tons and tons of data is today available. Now, but the question is, how do you logically process this and bring it into information? That is based on what purpose you're going to use it for. That is information. When it becomes processed, it becomes information. And when you use that information skillfully in a context to resolve an issue, then you're saying you have created knowledge. And we are trying, or we are aspiring to reach that stage. Now, let me again take you through an example. Now, suppose most of you, I believe, would be students or would be attached to higher education institutions. So suppose when I'm looking at one higher education institution, let us say it's a college with 1,000 students. And in this college, I find that there is a lot of what you call bad kind of eating habits, junk foods, eating out of different places, not eating in time, overeating, undereating, all these things are there on campus. So I thought, let me try and bring in a good diet or a good healthy eating system or healthy food system for the students of that college. So my issue is to have to become prescriptive in terms of food habits for one college for 1,000 students. Now, if this is the issue that I'm going to address, definitely my starting point is data. And that data consists of 1,000 values because there are 1,000 students. So I'll start with taking data of these 1,000 students. It will be 1,000 heights, the weight of 1,000 students, so 1,000 values for weight. Maybe I'll take the blood group, so I have got 1,000 values for the blood group of the students. Then I'll take the body mass index of students. So all this is data, their height, their weight, their food that they take, the BMI that they have. So all are 1,000 values. So I might have the gender of these 1,000 students. Some of them are male, some of them are female. I might look into whether they are day scholars or whether they are hosteliers. So much of data I have about this 1,000 students. But this as such does not convey any meaning. Now I'm trying to relate their height and weight and try to find out based on WHO standards how much of them have a normal weight, how much of them are having overweight, underweight. And I'm processing this entire information and I find out that 40% of the boys have overweight, another 20% have underweight, and another 40% are normally weight. Similar figures I have for girls. Now I have processed this data in terms of height, weight, and age, and I'm coming out with some benchmark standards in terms of what percentage of them are underweight or overweight. That is information. Now, even this is not the solution. I started with data, I processed this. Now I'm going into the normal weighing students is not an issue. I'm going to find out why some of them are having overweight, why some of them are having underweight, what are the eating habits, how much of junk food they take, what time they sleep, and I'm trying to undermine the reasons for this kind of a phenomenon. And I come to some conclusion that this is happening because of this. And from there, I'm becoming again further prescriptive in terms of resolution of my issue. And I'm saying that good diet, a good well being system for this people has to be prescribed. So when I'm trying and identifying why this overweight, underweight, and this diet issues and food issues are there with the student, I have created knowledge. And when I'm creating a sustainable food habit system for the students of that college, I'm moving into wisdom. So this is the journey that we are looking into. And the problem that I now talked about is in terms of what is happening with the students in one college. Similar kind of things will be happening in and around us. It could be with farmers struggling to sell their products. It could be in terms of inability to add value to a product, maybe in some local vicinity. It could be in terms of local resources like agro or other related products which are going waste because of inability to convert. It could be the problems of street vendors. It could be the problems of micro enterprises. And you will have tons and tons of data on that. You process that according to their needs, and you try to understand why this problem is existing, and if not a resolution, at least a mitigation or throwing light on the cause of the problem is your ability to create knowledge. And if you are trying to do something in terms of creating a sustainable system to resolve that, you're moving one step further into wisdom. So this is where we are trying to look at a knowledge society, because there is no dearth of data today. You want any kind of data, you can get that. When you talk about animal human conflict in the forest, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data of how many elephants are there, how many elephants are treading into human inhabitation. There is data. But what information you can draw from it? How can you process it? And how can you try and create a system where you can have a sustainable resolution for that? This is where we are being in the pursuit of knowledge. So this is where I was talking about basic research. Now, this data that you have is available in different forms, in different techno embedded formats, and we are trying to come up with some kind of findings to resolve that. It can be in terms of maybe a very small startup, it can be even to the extent of a very scientific product. Say, for example, a pay and use toilet that you have on the highway is something that has happened through knowledge creation, and the vaccination to deal with corona is also a research outcome. So there can be lots and lots of small products, services, systems, models which can evolve, where you link your learning, your theory, look out and then see some issues outside, and then do some good research where you create knowledge. This is what we are referring to when we are trying to look at knowledge society. So I'm appealing to all of you who are now there with us to try and look beyond. First, you look deep into your theories, your concepts, your models, and look outside and identify researchable issues. It may be very small, it may be very simple, it may sound to be very light, but try and see whether you can, with some of your energy, some of your theories, some of your learnings, resolve that and create something new, bring in some new knowledge to solve it, mitigate it, lighten it, brighten it, do something on that line. That is what we are trying to bring across through this session. And that is a very interesting and joyful process if you take that seriously. Now look at the transition in research. These are the three phases of the transition which is happening. One is we are journeying from theory to application. Again, it does not mean that theory is unimportant. Theory is very important. But that theory, as I said, this person is looking at a particular theory and trying to say how to resolve something. You look at all inventions, it has happened in that form. People looked at Wright brothers looked at the theory behind birds flying. And they created an application, that is an aircraft, which was the first aircraft. So theory to application. Then somebody looked at the first aircraft and tried to add more speed to it. Make it perhaps a aircraft which is in a different form. So theory to practice, the theory of how energy can happen when an atom bomb, when an atom is actually split. So theory to application. So all the theories that we actually study, whatever be the discipline in you are, whatever the discipline you are, the theory has got something to do with the real world outside. And how you link it up to the real world outside is the transition from theory to application. The second one is problem to solution. Corona created a big problem. Lots of people started dying. And it was a university which started looking for a solution in the form of a vaccination. So it can be a solution. It can be a resolution, or it can be, at least, if it's not a full solution, it can be at least telling the outside world that this is what causes the problem, or this is the real issue that has to be resolved. That is not the journey from the problem to the resolution. Again, it is a journey from the known to the unknown. Most of the knowledge that you create, let it be even in the case of when you're talking about maybe literature or a drama or a poetry or a new process or a new service, it's all moving from the known to the unknown. That means something in the form of a knowledge base, or in the form of a theoretical base, does exist, and from there somebody wanted to create something which was not known at that point of time. It was not known at that point of time. So you use something which is existing, and from there you journey into what is unknown. Wright brothers knew that there is a theory through which birds are flying, but what was not known is how an engine can fly, and they made that happen. So the transition is, you use characters, and from that characters you take some event which has happened in the past, and that event and character together might create a novel or a poetry or a drama. So known to that one became known only subsequently through somebody's creation, but there was something which was earlier there which acted as the basic trigger for taking it up. So our transition is also simply this. Why are we learning all these theories? Why are we coming across all these models? Why are we transacting all this? Is to look out and find where we can use this, how we can use this to resolve, to apply, to move into an unknown world and find out something new. This is basically what we are trying to do when we are referring to research. Now, in research, although we say a research degree is the highest degree, sure it is, and you add the title doctor and all, what we are simply doing is finding answers to just two simple questions. Question number one, what is that you wanted to find out? Now, that student which I was referring to earlier, he wanted to find out whether you can create a scientific parking system through the theories that I have studied, and thereby put an end to the problem of traffic jam, put an end to the waiting time, and put an end to the time and energy lost before the campus. So that is what he wanted to find out. Wright brothers wanted to find out whether an aeroplane can fly. There was a group of researchers who wanted to find out whether we can create a vaccination to deal with corona. There was somebody who wanted to find out, can we deal with the problem of those who wanted to a restroom while they're traveling through the highways. The result was pay and use toilets. So different kinds of things. Different, it can be small to live. Those who are using digital technology, they try to create the UPI kind of payment platforms through which it has become so popular in India. India took a very big lead in that, in this digital technology, and they said now we are making payment, cashless payment, seemingly possible. So this is what they wanted to find out. Now, still people are looking at whether you can find out whether you can create genetically modified meat. So that is what they wanted to find out. So people are there in pursuit. They want to find out something. So it can be very simple. It can be something which is related to an issue around you. It can be something very global, very drastic, very unique in terms of a product or a service. But we are very clear. What is that you wanted to find out? Then the second question, when this is answered, the second question is, how is that you found it out? How is that you found it out? What methodology you adopted to find it out? From where did you start this whole process of scientifically establishing this? Collecting your data, using your sample, using your literature, linking it. So it is something like what happens similar to medicine. You have a problem, say your head is aching or your stomach is aching, and you want to resolve that problem. You try to do something on your own, you're not successful, you consult a medical practitioner. And what is this medical practitioner doing? He's actually doing research. He is finding out, what is that he wanted to find out? He is trying to find out why the head is aching. How is that he is finding it out? He is using his test, he's using his scans or EEG or whatever, and then he's finding out why the head is aching. Now he knows it is because of this. Then what should he do? Give the right medicine, give the right procedure. So we are just looking at this. What is very important here is identifying why the head is aching, doing the right diagnosis, why your head is aching. Once the diagnosis is clear, once you know this is the problem, then the methodology will be in tune. So the purpose of our session today is exactly this, to understand that in research, what is very important is to catch hold of researchable issues in and around you, to address real life issues, and then you relate your theories to that. Then you can very easily know how it has to be found out. You can get that process. That is what we are attempting to do in basic research. So all the research activities that we do, let it be consultancy, publication, or an undergraduate project, master's project, to a PhD work, it's all addressing this, finding answers to these two questions. What is that you wanted to find out? And how is that you found it out? Now, what is research? It is creating, I'm just reiterating that fact. It is creating new knowledge. It is not just creating data. We are using data, and we will be using tons and tons of data. There will be lots of sources of data. There will be meaningful and meaningless data, but there will be data which is seemingly scaling up. But we have to find out which is the most appropriate data that we need. Now, when I'm talking about 1,000 students in a college and looking at their food habits and a good, healthy living for them, I might also come across some data of this 1,000 students, which is not at all related to health. So I am using data, meaningful data, but I'm not creating data. I'm using that data. I'm using it, I'm processing it, I'm creating information. But finally, what I want to do is land up with knowledge. So we are creating knowledge. And what is that knowledge? Some of it can be primarily original, theory first developed. Suppose you are talking about a particular theory of motivation or marketing, or somebody developed it for the first time. Then we come across additions to it, an extension to it. So you're adding to the existing knowledge, you're extending the existing knowledge, you're validating the existing knowledge. So it's all a basic search for knowledge. So that's why what we are trying to bring across. It's not always primarily original. It can be addition, extension. It can be you're agreeing to it. you're substantially establishing that. So that's it. So we need to understand that our journey is to be in search of knowledge. So we are searching for it, a knowledge search, which is pursued very beautifully. In fact, if you look at learning processes, that's why I said right from your, not even undergraduate and postgraduate, even your schooling, we are continuously in the pursuit of knowledge, some kind of research, because everything that we pick from the books, from the literature, from the theory, is not just for reproduction. It is also meant to link it up to reality. And when you link it up to reality, perhaps you'll have to do an extended kind of learning into it. That is what we are trying to research upon. Now, what are the basic requirements for knowledge creation? Just look at this. I have not mentioned what are the basic requirements for a PhD or for a UG degree or a project. That is not what I have said here. What I have mentioned is what are the basic requirements for knowledge creation. So we are in pursuit of knowledge. Look at the starting point. Acquire existing knowledge. Acquire existing knowledge. Somebody wants to do research on something. Suppose I am in human resources. I want to do research on, say, motivation theories. Now, I'm talking about a new motivation philosophy for maybe for an industry or a sector. But there is something which is existing. I should know what is existing at present. And from there, I can, otherwise it will be just a repetition or a duplication of what is already said. So what is existing? And from there, what more do you want to make known? What is known already and what is that you want to make known? That distinction should be very clear. So even when you talk about, I was referring to the Wright brothers, what was existing, there was no plane that was existing. But they have made it very clear how they watched the birds fly. And that theory was existing. Unless you understand that, you cannot create an aeroplane. So something which is existing. Somebody came and told me the other day that I want to do research on people's planning. So immediately I asked them, where did this whole concept first come? Who are the first people to talk about it? Unless you know that, you cannot pick up. You want to do your research on, say, total quality management. So what are the basic theories which are so far existing? And what is that which you want to create different from that? Now, once you do point one, you land up at two. How was it created? How was that existing knowledge created? It was created by somebody. It was created at some point of time. It was created or it was said by somebody in some part of the world. And you come to three. If so, is it contextually relevant in terms of time, location, application? We are not saying it's irrelevant. It is relevant, but it was relevant at one point of time. It may or may not be relevant now. It was relevant in one place. It may or may not be relevant in this place now. It was relevant with one kind of application. It may or may not be relevant with the same application. So contextually, your context can be your state. It can be your industry, your family, your society, your village. So in that particular place, in that particular application, is it contextually relevant? Now, when you do 1, 2, 3, you look at what is existing, you looked at how it was created, you looked at contextual relevance. Now you're identifying inadequacies, incompleteness, imperfections, if any. May be there, may not be there. Now, if you believe that there is a gap, that means what is said and what I'm looking at in a context, there is a gap. That is what we call as a knowledge gap. And what are we doing? In research, we are filling it. We are filling the gap between the known and the unknown. That is simply what we are doing. So in every small learning that we get, in every theoretical framework or every module that we catch up, we look at the context and we are trying to establish, yes, it is still valid. It requires more validation, or there are some gaps in it, and I'm trying to fill the gap between the known and the unknown. Now, why are we doing research? Now, the purpose, basically, why we are not able to get the best results in creating knowledge, it is because of not fully internalizing the purpose of doing research. Often we are doing things ritualistically. We are just doing it for the sake of it. So I want a PhD, I want a job, I want a promotion, I want a career advancement, so I'm doing it. I want to complete my degree, and in that somebody said there is one project which you should do. So I'm doing things just to meet compulsory requirements, just to do it. Well, that's what I've put in red. Just to meet mark requirements. Some marks are given for the projects. Some coursework has to be done. So I'm just doing mandatory things. So I'm not joyfully engaged or involved in the process of addressing a problem and creating knowledge to redress that problem. My basic concern is getting a degree or getting out of my present condition through a degree or through a PhD. So if that is my pursuit, perhaps my real interest in research gets lost. So we are not saying that you don't get a job or you don't take your promotion or you don't get all these things. You can take it, but you must take it after delivering the new knowledge. So your primary purpose is learning something or having focused understanding, find something new in terms of knowledge. So you create new knowledge, you try to resolve, you try to mitigate, you try to solve through suggested means. And after having done that, you take your reward. It can be a promotion, it can be a career advancement, it can even be a Nobel Prize. So knowledge creation should be the basic purpose. And if that is clear in my mind, I'm continuously in the pursuit of that knowledge which I'm trying to create out of the theoretical backing, out of the learning that I have acquired or I'm continuously acquiring. Now, so we have finished one part. I'm pausing for a moment now. Yeah, you have your question and answer sessions at the end, so we'll discuss that. What we have covered so far is a very simple meaning of research as a common sense approach in the creation of knowledge, a journey from from the known to the unknown. We are exploring the unknown. We are trying to find the truth. We are trying to create new knowledge, and that new knowledge is helping in resolving, solving, mitigating a researchable issue. So now we are coming to the second part. What is a research problem? This is where we are in search of that. As I said, the doctor is trying to find out why this person's head is aching. A reported problem is headache. That is in medicine. So for us, research, what is a research problem? It's an issue which actually deserves attention. Some issue which deserves attention in a specific context. The attention that it deserves is in a specific context. That was what we saw when COVID came. That was what I said in the traffic case. That was what I put across. We had another live project on air cargo. Somebody who studied warehousing theories tried to talk about dealing with air cargo, and that was accepted by the cargo division of the airport. So they're trying to look at how to deal with these issues, how to actually find out some issues. And there are lots of issues around us. That's why I said when young graduates and postgraduates and researchers like you, there are real life issues around us which requires good research, which requires a deeper, insightful learning into why this is happening. And that is a research problem. And we are actually in the pursuit of such research problems. So this is a research problem, an issue in a context somebody is facing. And that context can be a large global context, like when I said Corona, it affected the entire world. Or when you say the subprime crisis, which started in US, had a spillover across countries. So the issue is so complex, so dynamic, so wide, so deep, so strong. And the issue can also be something which is affecting an individual, affecting a family, affecting a village, affecting a region, affecting a sector, affecting only street vendors, affecting only the migrant laborers, affecting only the agro producers of some product, affecting people who live under one set of conditions. This could all be the context. And there could be different dimensions in which different people learn about it. Say, for example, people in medicine were looking at how to create a vaccination to deal with it. Some people were looking at how to ensure free movement of goods. So that is coming in social sciences. Some people were talking about trade barriers and how to deal with this. Some people talked about, those who are in the education sector, digital transmission of education. You have all your online webinars, seminars, and all happening at that point of time. So they did research on that. Some people did research on how to make online payments possible, how to look at a cashless economy. So the same problem in different dimensions, in different context. So that is a problem. It is talking about something which is experienced or a limitation or a threat which has to be solved. And how do you solve it? You solve it using knowledge. You solve it with some theories which get aligned with the same. That is what is a research problem. And from there comes in what is known as a research idea. That is that. What is that idea? A plan to work on that problem. A plan to work on that problem and address the same. So we are trying to address that. Now that might not spark or equally gel with all. It might be a problem, but there could be some people who are not very much interested in it. A bank collapsed or a building collapsed or a system has collapsed, but I'm not interested much or I'm not in depth involved in it in terms of my understanding. So it's not my cup of tea. There are certain things which I feel is very interesting to me. I have been observing that. I have been trying to collate the theory along with that. That is your idea. So there are certain things which can spark out as genuine research ideas in terms of what is happening outside. So from that, what do you understand basically here is very simple. Your openness to the society, the community, the problems, the people around you. The people around you, the community in which you live, the village in which you live, the city in which you live, the people whom you come across. When you just observe, you see there are some issues there. And some of those issues are perhaps related with certain things which I learned. We talk a lot, say, for instance, in environment science, we talk a lot about waste management. We talk about green initiatives. We talk about clean air and clean water. And do we actually come across that around? And when you see a river is polluted, when you see the air is polluted, when you see waste is compiling, does this gel with any of the theories that you have studied in terms of addressing this? That is research problem and research idea that we are referring to. When you talk about micro enterprises, when you talk about agriculture, when you talk about value addition, when you talk about the inability to market products in a customized form, when you're actually studying marketing, are you looking out and trying to link it to this? That is what we're actually talking about when we are bringing in real life research issues over there. Now, how are we actually identifying a problem? How are we actually identifying a research problem? Two models have been talked about here. One model is actually what we call funneling. This is what I'm discussing first. Funneling has the properties of a funnel. I think all of you would know what is a funnel. A funnel is something which has a very broad, wide top, and it narrows down like a cone and it comes to a point. Basically, it's used to pour liquid into a container. So why is this called funneling? This is called funneling because at the starting point, I don't have a known experienced problem in my hand. When I said corona, it was an experienced problem. When I said traffic problem, it was an experienced problem. And that is known, and I'm addressing that problem. Now, this is a situation where I want to do real research, but I have to identify my area in which I want to do research. So what I'm trying to do, I'm not starting with the problem. I'm starting with the broad area of research. Should I do it in marketing, banking, HR, finance, literature, economics, econometrics, data science, systems? What will be my broad area of research? Now, when you choose this should, that's why I said your cup of tea. This should be based on the researcher's knowledge base, passion, and interest. Why? If it is not based on your knowledge base or your passion or your interest, then it will always be allergic to you. The broad area that I am in, I'm feeling that it is not something which is very passionate or very to my liking. So somewhere down the line, I'm feeling it to be allergic. So you decide the broad area, you are at the top of the funnel. Now what are you doing? You're narrowing down that area, coming down the funnel, focusing on some specific issues in a context. In that broad area, you're trying to look at some problem which is existing in some place. Say, for example, I am interested in banking. So I try to say, okay, I'm going to look at some issue in banking. Then when I do a very broad, wide searching kind of exercise, I'm finding, okay, non-performing assets in banking is something which is an issue. Mounting NPAs are happening. Then I'm seeing that mounting NPAs happening in one state or in one sector. So I'm narrowing down. I would study banking, in-banking NPAs, in-banking NPAs, and profit impact among certain banks in a particular context. See how I'm narrowing down. Then what am I doing? I'm considering researchability. Problem, is it researchable in terms of what we saw, knowledge gap? That means in this problem that I've identified, maybe the solution is already set by somebody. A theory to deal with that problem is well explained and standing right now. There is nothing further to be said in that, and you can just use it. That's all. On the other hand, researchability is, yeah, there is something still to be researched in that. It's yet to be found out. yet to be explored, which means there is a knowledge gap and it is researchable. And when you're saying it is researchable, you're saying that you're in a virgin area. Otherwise, basically, you are in an occupied area. Somebody else has already said this. Somebody else has already created a solution for it. Somebody else has already built a model for it. And that, as such, is something which can be used now. So there's no need of some change in it. So that's where you're saying you're in a virgin area. Now, when you want to add something, you have to put yourself in a virgin area. But if you're saying that everything is done earlier, you are in an occupied area. Now, availability of time and finance. Suppose your project is for 6 months, or your researcher has got 3 years. So how much time and how much funds would you have to do your research? Accordingly, you're planning to take up the scope of the study. Then you decide from where are you going to get data. Is it available and is it accessible? Some data perhaps is available but not accessible. Suppose I want to know the details about the bank account of individual customers. It is available, but the bank will not give you. Certain data is available and accessible. So you have to look for it. How are you going to get that? Then you're looking at the validity of your research. What do you mean by validity? I am now delivering a session for you. And right now I can see around 150 participants are attending this. How will you decide whether this is valid or not? The validity for this essentially comes when you say that there is a beneficiary out of this. This is going to benefit you. You're going to use it. You're going to, you're getting some insightful understanding from it. Then it is valid. And that benefit can be small, as I said. It can be, you're saying current relevance. It can be the benefit to the society. It can be the nation. It can be the world. It can be even an individual. So there must be something which is relevant that comes out of it. Then what are you doing? What is the possibility? Suppose I find this out. That is what earlier when we were talking about AI and coding of the brain, or when we talk about genetically modified meat, or when you talk about longevity of life using artificial intelligence and all these things, what is the possibility of implementation? What are the health ethics involved in it? How much can this be done? Possibility. It's only the possibility. Then we are not saying that every research is an end. There are certain things which can be done beyond this. There are certain things which you need to do further. So you spell that out and you specify the parameters of the study. I'm going to study these variables, this area, and this is my scope. And then you decide the title. So look at this. Arriving at your title itself is the tip of the bottom of the funnel. And that very precisely tells what your problem is, how are you going to study, is it researchable, what is the validity of it. After examining this, you reach at this. This is one of the models through which you can actually arrive at a research issue. So you're coming across a research issue, a research problem. So I'm very focused, I'm very finite on that part, and I'm correctly designing what I want at that particular point of time. So that is actually one model that you have, the funneling form that you have. So you decide, if I'm following this path, how I'll meaningfully integrate and come down to the tip, and then decide what we actually want to do in terms of our research. The second model is what we call ballooning. Ballooning. It is just the reverse of funneling. You know, funnel has a very broad top, comes down to a point. Here a balloon is initially very small, but we blow it up. This is a method that you follow when a specific problem experienced, maybe industry, society, nation, globe, wherever. An experienced problem is known, the corona case, say for instance. It is experienced, its impact was felt, people were dying, people were suffering. The virus was mutating, lots of problems were coming up. And this problem had to be blown up in terms of finding solution. Put your minds, put your hearts, put your thoughts together and see how you can actually resolve this problem, come and get into a final resolution for this problem. That was what we are trying to look at. So it is so very important, so very important. to balloon up a specific problem. Now, what are the steps here? Now, this again, understand ballooning up this problem, although I gave you the example of Corona, which has affected the entire world, it can be things which is affecting, as I said, a family, an individual, a sector, a micro enterprise, a street vendor, a village, a community, can all be that. It can be affecting creating cultural barriers, issues in migrate. All these could be issues. So you need to understand implications that come from it. Then again, the same processes. Only the first step is actually different. All other steps, you are examining the researcher's interest in it. Then you're looking at your exposure to the specific issue. Then researchability, other issues are same, so I'm not spending time on that. And then again, you look at researchability, possibility for implementation, validity, and you decide the title. So the same process is what we saw in both. So this is how you have the problem. And there we have come to stage 2. The first stage, we were trying, I'm thinking, making a recap. We were trying to look at research. Research is reaching into or creating new knowledge, journeying from the known to the unknown, establishing something new, trying to resolve something using the theoretical framework that is existing for that. And then we saw how to identify a problem. 2 models were discussed. We also saw what is a problem, an issue which is experienced in a context, and we are trying to look at it, magnify it, and very closely try to look at the theoretical backing through which we can do it. Now we move to the third part, the birth of an idea. What are the sources of ideas? How will we actually get hold of ideas? And who are the researchers? Who are the students? Who are the inventors? Who are the innovators who get these ideas? You know, Newton was sitting under a tree and he saw an apple falling to the ground. That led to a new theory. A lot of people were sitting under different trees. But only this man, he observed something. He observed something. That means he was not blank when he was sitting under a tree. He had internalized some theories and then he looked out and tried to reach out something which was associated with that theory, which is happening outside. Again, the very simple example with which I started my storytelling, the first story that I gave you, was about a student who observed a traffic jam, who observed the loss of time and energy in parking, and then he related it to a theory. This is actually the birth of idea. This is a source of ideas. Realities. I put business talking about the context. It need not be business. It can be society. It can be cultural backdrops. It can be social economic situations. So realities in industry, business, environment, society, that is a source of idea. And observations and experiences. People, necessity is the mother of all creation, actually. People faced problems, they try to revive, they try to come up. So observations, experiences, interaction with experts, interaction with problem facers. That's why we need to actually know what these people who are facing problems are facing. There's a lot of loss of resources happening because of inability of the people to come together and convert this, transform this. So the source of idea comes from realities. Realities. Looking at the flying birds, looking at the falling apple, looking at the traffic jam, looking at the people who are dying, looking at the villagers who are suffering, looking at the waste around you, looking at the micro enterprises which are succeeding and which are also failing, looking at the retailers which are happening, looking at the ads which are going on, looking at the products which are customized, and then relating this to the theories. So it comes with this. That is why all your learning is saying it should be filled with internship, it should be filled with experiential learning, it should be filled with relational learning, and it should be filled with translational learning. Only then you'll have this. So our understanding is so very strong into that line, birth of an idea. So unless you're exposed to these things, ideas, you see, just let us look at what happened with Gautam Buddha. He was born into a very majestic family as a king. He was never told about problems, sufferings, and all. But once when he saw a dead body being taken for burial, he got totally moved. He got totally moved. He could not sleep. He got disturbed. And then he said, what is the cause of all suffering? And you know what happened, how he went in search of truth, which is also research. Being in the pursuit of truth, trying to find an answer to this. So, but had he not seen this, had he seen only the palace, had he not looked out, had he not peeped out from the windows of the palace, never this research issue would have come before him. So, as students and learners, from the environment in which we are, numerous things are happening outside. Observe, not just see, observe, experience, interact, pick, and then relate. And then that is, you will get a good idea. Now look at this chart. The first quadrant talks about the outside part of it. Observations, experiences, problems, success factors, failures. So people think even out of failures, there are different things to learn. Why it failed? You know the amount of research that goes into the failure of a rocket, ISRO? Just like they do research to create a rocket, to have the payload launched into space, they also do research onto why it failed and how that failure should be avoided in future. So it comes from this, the environment. Now look at the second part, your theoretical knowledge. I have talked about the theories of HR, finance. It can be in any discipline. And you move to the third one, linking known to the realities. So the realities in the first part, some theories, some learnings, some extractions, some literature which you elicit, and then you try to relate it to this. What I learned from the literature, from the books, from the classes, and what is happening outside. Linking, learnings and resolutions. So that is research. That is where you're giving birth to an idea. That idea is what we're actually referring to when we are talking about research ideas. Birth of an idea, knowing the environment, it comes, how do you come? As I said, observations are there, your experiences are there, a lot of things are there in the media, your newspapers, business dailies, business channels. You get to know many things from internship. Internship is actually meant to give you observations, give you experiences, give you experiential learning so that you relate from what you get outside to what is there in your books and bring out a research proposal based on that. It also comes through case studies. It also comes through industrial visits. You also have invited talks. So all these people will talk about what are the problems outside, what are the issues outside, and how do you transform this into problems which need to be researched. Now, there will be numerous ones that come out. Everything you need not take out. Just try to see whether some of this is matching with your passion, with the theories that you are very comfortable in, and you will enjoy trying to unfold the truth behind it. That is what we are trying to bring across. Again, birth of an idea, the second part, theoretical knowledge, that comes from published theories, literatures. And that's all that we do with all that you have studied over semesters. That's why we are saying, earlier I said, even those who are illiterate, that's why we are saying somebody who has a master's degree, he has mastered the theories, that is what it is presumed to be. And somebody who's doing a project in BCom has mastered something in the semesters, something who's doing his master's project in your MCom, MBA, MA, or whatever. You have mastered some content. Now try to look at that and then the realities. That is what is happening. Now, we finished 3. So what is research? Then how to come out with a problem. how to have a give birth to an idea. That's why we said from idea to practice. Now I want to link these two, my research idea, the problem, and I want to link it. So I'm creating a proposal. I'm writing a proposal. That's what we do in a synopsis proposal for PhD. Even in masters or UG, you can do it. You prepare a plan of action to work on how am I going to create knowledge? How am I going to create knowledge? How am I going to make known, bring something new, something that still or till date is not known? There are many things even which are not known. There could be fundamental theories associated with it, but the happenings, the why of it, the where of it, the how of it is still unknown. So how it happens? Then imparting new knowledge on resolutions of issues. Then again, case analysis or what you call deeper new learning. Now you look at all these terms, 1, 2, 3, 4, there is always something new in it. So your proposal talks about how you want to do something new. Something new. How you want to create new knowledge. It need not always be a very path-breaking invention. If you can do that, well and good. You get a patent, you get a very good publication, you get a technology breakthrough, well and good. But even if that is not possible, you must have something new in terms of dealing with one situational problem. That how are you going to address it is your proposal, and you write it and you work it out. That is what is happening in the proposal. Now, what is a research proposal? Plan of action. Plan of action to work on an issue of relevance. You have a plan. So there are two things: issue of relevance, passion to work on the same, and that will contribute to the idea. So I have an issue of relevance, which can be even next door, or it can be in my village, or in my state, or in my context. And I'm having a passion to work on that. And I'm saying that that will contribute to the idea, which is actually building up thereon. Now, you make a description of your plan of action. You're describing that plan of action. You're creating a suggested pathway to arrive at new knowledge. I'm saying that, I'm making it very clear that this, just like the doctor is saying, I have looked into my patient. I know that his head is aching because of XY reason. This is the cause of it. This is the identified part. And now this is how I'm going to work on it. So I know that there has been food issues in this college. There is diet problem among these students. That is why they are overweight. Then I'm trying to find out the reasons. I'm going to take a good sample. I'm going to test what are the things that they're eating. So I have a methodology for it. Suggested plan of action to arrive at new knowledge of learning. That is where you're saying I'm going to take the right variables. I'm going to look at the sample, which is our methodological issues, which we'll subsequently discuss when we go ahead further with this. But initially, we're talking about the hardcore research bend, which is so important. So you put a work plan, and then that is what we actually call the research design. We are putting a blueprint for what we are going to actually do. Now, do we always write a proposal? Yes, for PhD it is mandatory. For masters, not always, but some institutions do. They ask students to prepare a proposal and make them very idea statement. What is your research idea? Do you have a real life problem with you? How are you going to use the theory to link it up with that idea? And then you defend it. So then you are encouraged to look closer into your plan. That is a proposal that we actually have in your mind. Now look at the linkage here. Initially, you had a raw idea. This particular issue can be solved in this particular form, or I can gather some data and create something out of this in this form. Then that raw idea is transmitted into a plan of action or a proposal. And then I'm working it out in terms of a research pathway that I lead. That is the linkage that we are actually referring to. Now, what makes a proposal good again? The validity of your idea. That's why we are saying we need to have what you call very strong dreams into what issues we are actually seeing and how you believe these issues can be actually dealt with. So the validity of the idea is proposed in terms of if this idea is worked out, What will be the relevance to the society? I was mentioning about space science and all. They are saying if this payload goes to space, the satellite is launched, this is how the society will benefit in terms of mapping agro resources, in terms of defense, in terms of this sector, that sector. How will they benefit? They're talking about new learnings. They're talking about new resolutions. They're talking about value creations. So essentially, the proposal talks about benefits and beneficiaries, which will come out from the new knowledge. And that kind of a thinking is something which is very important in your research pathway. This is the validity justification. In my proposal, I am very clear that I am going to study this issue. That is my research problem. Based on it, I have these objectives. I'm looking at what is existing, review of literature. Then I have with me a hypothesis. Whether you write it down or not, you have a hypothesis. We'll discuss that immediately after this. Then you do your analysis and testing, and you come back to the problem. So it is circling round back to the problem. Your research cannot say that there was a problem, there were some objectives, I related to the existing literature, then I did some analysis, but it is not going back to the problem. Problem is still there as it is. It is like going and telling your doctor, I have a headache. The doctor did a lot of analysis, did a lot of methodologies and procedures, but your head is still aching. Then you say this doctor is not a good doctor. He has not found a solution. Or at least he is not giving a good diagnosis. So it should circulate down into that particular level. Now, in your research, the final part, when you work it out, most of our researchers are having a cost-effect study. I said diet, health, advertisement, sales. So I'm saying whether advertisement is pushing sales, the impact of price on demand, or the impact of rainfall on agriculture production of paddy or whatever be the agro product, the impact of what you call different components and the strength of a structure. So we study association between variables. But one among this is independent and other is dependent. When I'm saying price and demand, I'm saying demand depends on price. If price goes high, less is demanded. When I'm saying advertisement and sales, I'm saying advertisement, you spend more, it will create more sales. So sales is dependent, advertisement is independent. When I'm saying production and rainfall, production of paddy and rainfall, I'm saying production of paddy is dependent, rainfall is independent. But the problem is not here. I'm not coming into the hardcore methodology. What problem here is, in the process of your research, we should also understand that you are taking two variables and trying to find out the association. One is dependent and the other is independent. But what about the other variables? They might be intervening. They might be extraneous. But if you do not keep their impact constant, or at least controlled, then your process is not justifying. So that becomes very, very important in your research process. Let us say rainfall and paddy. You're saying when rainfall went up, production of paddy also went up. But production of paddy is not just influenced by rainfall alone. There are other variables like use of fertilizer, use of insecticide, type of the soil. Now, if you're not looking at the impact of the other three and just saying rainfall and this, it is not a valid research. So your validity is also based on association between variables, which is the meaningful process through which you actually launch your research. Now, the last important thing that we have to look into is whether you write it like that or not. When Newton was sitting under a tree, he had a hypothesis with him. So hypothesis comes when you internalize something. When I internalize a theory, when I introspect over a theory and then look outside, I have a hypothesis. What is this hypothesis? It's just a combination of two words, hypo, thesis. Hypo means less than, below. Thesis is scientifically established, empirically tested fact. So hypothesis put the terms something which tentatively you presume to be a fact. And that tentative feeling is not a dogmatic feeling. It is a feeling which comes out of deep introspection or understanding of theories. So I understand theories, I internalize theories, and then when I look outside, I see something and I have a tentative feeling that this is because of that. That is hypothesis. Newton had internalized the theories of objects being attracted towards Earth, and suddenly he saw a falling apple. So that is where we are saying, as learners, graduates, postgraduates, researchers, do your research, your review of existing theories, and then you look outside. Then you will see that the existing knowledge has to be tested contextually. It may be correct, may not be correct. Some outcomes are not established. Some relationships are not proved. There is some doubted rationality. And all this comes from your that's why we have said existing base. So somebody said something, it is a theory, it is an accepted model, but when you look at your context, when you look at your situation, you find that this may be right or may not be right. That is a hypothesis. So how are you hypothesizing something? That is only when you have your research ideas. When you look outside with a bend into the reality, you find that, because if I make a statement about a scientific thing, so suppose I'm saying you go 10,000 feet above the sea level and the temperature is minus 18 degree, 80 degrees centigrade or something like that. I'm making a blind statement. I don't know it's right or wrong. But you will not have a doubt if you do not know the relationship between height and temperature. But where you know the relationship and I make a statement, you will say that I am not sure whether what you said is correct. That is hypothesis. So knowing things and then looking outside to reality will give us a jump, a leap into a research idea. And that is what we are trying to put across. My task here is not to talk about hypothesis variables and all. I'm just trying to put it into the research idea and the research problem. That's why I'm bringing these two things over here. Now, why are we reviewing this? To know whether there's a gap between. Why are we reviewing literature? What is said and what you want to say, to create a continuum. Somebody said something in the past, you want to say something which is different, and then somebody will say something in future, and develop a hypothesis on the continuous process that is aligned with it. Now, we have generally an initial hypothesis in the proposal. You're saying that normally, okay, this is happening. Suicide is being committed in this village, maybe because of this. I'm not sure. There is a theory, but based on that theory, I feel it is because of that. There is a lot of people who are dying because of this. Maybe it is because of this virus. I'm not sure. There are a lot of sale of products which are happening at distress selling. The price is going down. Maybe it is because of this. I'm not sure. So a theory, and I'm looking at a context, and you're having an initial proposal. This can be subsequently developed based on the continuous literature and observations that you have. Then you have a systematic review or a thematic review. So you're looking at what is existing in depth. So this is all that we are trying to look at in the terms of initial methodology. So you use the real-time data, you use the exact sample, the variables, you're analyzing, and you're eliciting your findings. So that is the part through which we roll across this. We move into this, and we try to work it out in a very focused form. So that's where I'm trying to put across. As I said repeatedly, I'm not going, because if you want to discuss methodology, hypothesis, and variables, that will be a separate session. My task is only to talk about the fundamentals of research, launching into a research pad, creating a mindset for research, identifying researchable issues, and then creating a right idea and proposal for that research. I'm just putting that proposal. In that proposal part, I'm giving the minimum inputs on how you can use real-time data. Thanks to technology, you have lots and lots of numerous measures through which real-time tons of big data is available. But how to use it, how to take a right sample, how to use the right variables, how to do the right analysis, and then how to elicit the correct findings, which in turn will move around towards the problem. That is what is actually looked into. And the last part is we want to land up with research outcomes. We have a deep urge in us. The researcher has a very firm, deep urge in themselves to create some outcomes. That outcome is not just getting a degree or getting a PhD. That outcome is finding applications for the new knowledge. The student that I was referring to in the first story used his layout to create a parking system. The student who did warehousing theories talked about how to handle cargo in one particular airport. The researchers who did research on vaccination tried to resolve the problem of corona. The student who did a startup and brought in something like a pay and use toilet for highways resolved the problem, gave application for the issue of restrooms on highways. Like that, there are numerous issues which gets unfolded. So application for new knowledge. Problem resolution or mitigation, that is another very important outcome. Societal benefits, how is a society getting benefited? It can also be policy support because you're giving some information which the government or some policy making body will put into a plan of action which they will implement for a larger masses. Then the other outcomes, as I said, you can have publications, even from undergraduate, postgraduate research, you can have publications, you can have patents, you can create products or services. I was referring to UPI apps. These are all the outcomes. So, outcomes, if you aspire for the same, if you dream for the same, if you put yourself into the same, it is something which we can bring in. And there are numerous researchers which are happening in institutions where the outcomes have found value, where they could say that if not transforming the world, we could do something for the society. We could bring some knowledge which is part of a policy, or we could create a new application. We could help the blind. We could create a product for this sector. We could help a few farmers, whatever. Those are the research outcomes. So that's where we're trying to move to the last part. So we just try to look at this culture for using the theories that we learn, using the models and propositions that we learn, using the literature that we have to extend the same outside to realities and thereby have a culture to understand researchable issues outside, the problems outside, try to have a good idea by looking into the realities, create a proposal to link ideas into the problems, and finally aspire for research outcomes. Once you do that, essentially you are being a change agent. Then the knowledge creation will transform your life. If you have done a very good project, I'm talking about a very grassroots level, a very good project based on a very good firm theoretical backing, that is going to lead you into placement. That is going to lead you into some better institution. That is perhaps going to lead you into a big research institution. That is going to empower you and transform you. So it is not when you give something which is realistic to the society outside, the giver himself is taking back a transformation to life. You're changing something outside and you're making a change for yourself. You're empowering yourself. That is what is so very important in research. So that's where I end. I hope and wish that all of you become this kind of a researcher, a change agent who will create new knowledge, bring in a transformation, bring in a small change in whatever context they are, and thereby lead the change process. Thank you so much. Wish you all the very, very best in all your research pursuits. Hopefully, we'll see more of such sessions in future where we'll interact and try to understand how we can strengthen, energize our learning processes. Thank you. Wish you all the very, very best. Now, anything which you would like to share, you can unmute or put it in your chat box. And then I'm not saying it could be always a doubt. It can be just a sharing of thoughts to sharpen our learning. Thank you so much.
Good evening, sir. I'm
Good
Ankita
evening.
from Punjab. I'm
Yeah.
Ankita from Punjab. So your
Punjab,
lecture was your lecture was really informative
Could you
in a very.
introduce yourself? What are you doing actually?
Sir, I'm a PhD student in the
PhD.
Department of Economics, Punjabi University, Patiala.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah. Now you can share
Uh,
me.
So I feel that in during research, I feel that there are certain concepts which are really overlapping each other. For example, I tried to study about research questions versus research objectives.
Yeah,
These are the very similar kind of concepts, and sometimes it's really difficult to differentiate between the both. Like, what is the difference between research questions
and
versus research objectives?
yeah,
And my second concern is, in economics sometimes we see that there is a so much pressure of applying the model
yeah.
and different econometrics model, and by applying such a model sometimes we overlook the theoretical or conceptual base.
Okay, yeah.
So how we can balance out these hurdles, like
Two
in
things.
economic. Hanji,
Good,
thank
good. Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful question. The first question is regarding how do you demarcate between objectives and research questions. Now, I think something which all of us will understand. What is an objective? Objective is what you want to accomplish from your research. That which you suppose I want to find out how the virus, suppose I put it in terms of science. I'm not from science, but I'm just giving an example. I don't know whether I'm committing a blunder or not. How a particular virus is, what do you call, having its impact on human body. This is my objective. Now, question will be in terms of, it will be directly associated with this. It will be talking about, it will be putting this exactly in the form of what is the cause of the bite of, or this the extract of this virus on human body. So one is what you want to accomplish, and other in that, when you're saying that I want to accomplish this, again I want to try to see the impact of advertisement on sales. This is my objective. Objective is to find out the impact of advertisement on sales. I want to see the impact of rainfall on production of paddy. Objective. These two cases, how will I put it as a question? My question will be in a very positive form. I'm saying that does advertisement impact sales positively? So it is directly associated with this. As you said, the demarcating line is very thin, but one is what you want to accomplish, and other is what you tentatively be. Question is more associated with the hypothetical part of it. So that is the first part. So and then that has got a relationship with how you keep the other factors, the intervening factors, constant also. Second question that you raised is conceptual framework, theoretical framework that you have, and the constructs that come from it. Now, conceptual framework is how the researcher conceives that there is a gap between what is said earlier and what you intend to establish in a particular study. That is conceptual framework. Theoretical framework is what the literature says in relation to the same. So theoretical part, when you say your SEMs or models that you create, we have a theoretical backing which says something is in this form. And then conceptually, you have a different understanding. Since you raised this question, let me give it in a very simple example. Let us say I come from one village. Okay, I'm coming from a village. One day when I go to my home, I hear about a person's death. And you just listen to me carefully, you'll get hold of the concept. I hear about a person's death, and this man died at the age of 95. Suddenly, something struck me, idea, as I said earlier. I just relate this to another death which happened 1 week back. And I'm finding that man died at the age of 90. So, two figures I have given you. The present death happened at 95, and the previous death happened at the age of 90. Data. Out of casual interest, I go to the village office and I take the age at which the last 10 deaths in that village has happened, only 10. And I find that out of the 10, 8 of them have died above the age of 85. You got the data? Latest death 95, one death before that 90, 8 out of 10 died at an age above 85. Is this bringing any hypothesis in you? Now, what am I referring to in this theoretical framework? What am I referring to? I am referring to life expectancy. Theoretical framework, there is a life expectancy for India, which is not my finding, it is published. There is a life expectancy of for each state, which is also not my finding, is published. There's a theoretical framework. Now that says the average life expectancy is something which is published. So India is something like 75 plus, Kerala is something like 78, 80. This is published, it is known. Now suddenly conceptually, I tend to believe that people in my village are living longer because the theoretical framework says 78, 80. But in my village, I'm seeing everybody is living. I'm not sure because only the 10 cases I know. But out of the 10, 8 I've got. Conceptually, I'm believing that they have a longer life than what is the life of India or what is the life of Kerala. I'm having a different frame there. This is conceptual framework. Conceptually, I'm saying that there is a gap in the theory. I'm just giving an example. I'm saying a gap because the theory says life expectancy is this. This is how it goes. So like that, the theoretical framework is what the literature has established. And in your context, I'm also again not saying that what is said in the theory is fully wrong. That might be correct. But I'm finding a case where contextually I believe that there's a deviation and there is a gap. That is conceptual framework. What is theoretically established is theoretical framework. This is the difference between the two. I hope I have shed some light on that. The other one is actually talking about what is that you wanted to establish objective. How are you hypothetically relating it in the form of an interrogative form? That is your question. What do you want to probe? That is the difference. I hope, Ankita, I have shed some light to what you wanted to get through. So
So
I
you
believe,
also,
yeah, please.
actually, nobody's asked. Sir, you also mentioned about the variables, independent variable or dependent variable.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
sometimes in real life, for example, say we take two variables, education and income.
yeah.
So sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate what is independent or what is
Dependent.
dependent.
Good,
Suppose
good.
uh,
Very good.
if we have a good education, then we have a good income. But vice versa is also true. If we have a good income, then we can acquire the good education. So in
Okay.
certain cases, it's very difficult to uh, locate which is the dependent and which is the and what is the
Yeah,
independent.
sure, sure. Very good. Again, very good question. You are in economics. I'm
Yes.
also in business studies. And I think all of you would be in different disciplines. The answer to this question is very closely associated to whether you are in physical science, natural science, environment science, or in social science. What you now said is very relevant in social science. Now, let me say, since you raised this question, I want to see the impact of light. Listen to me very carefully. Again, I'm admitting the fact that I'm not from science. I'm just giving an example from there. I want to see what is the impact of light in a chemical bonding. So two sets of chemicals or something, you want to see the reaction. I want to see the impact of light. But when this chemical bonding takes place, there is also the impact of sound. There is also the impact of humidity. There is also the impact of pressure. Different variables are there. But I want to study the impact of light alone. Okay. So light is the independent variable, and what happens in the reaction is dependent variable. But it should be getting 100% impact of light alone, one variable alone. Other variables must be nullified. In science, this is possible. You take this into a particular container, a glass container. You suck out what you call humidity. You put it into a soundproof container. You take it to a lab, keep other conditions controlled, 100% controlled, perfectly controlled, and then you pass light. Now, if there is any change, you can say it is 100% because of light, because all other variables have been nullified. That kind of perfection is not possible in social science. Agreed? This is number one. Second, but this does not mean that you can just leave it saying that, okay, all these things will. Suppose I'm saying, say, in the case of agriculture, or in the case of, say, in the case of advertisement, I'm saying that, okay, sales increase by this much. The impact of advertisement is this much. And I'm saying this could also have been impacted by season. This also can be impacted by income. Then what am I trying to say? I'm not saying the exact impact of advertisement. So you must keep the other variables under control under experimental conditions, experimental group and control group. That is the methodology that I'm trying to refer to. Yes. Second part of what you asked, there is also a possibility that dependence and independence can have a reverse impact. But when we want to realistically look at the impact of one variable on the other, you must bring in conditions, experimental conditions, where that impact of, you said education and maybe standard of living. So maybe standard of living is also influencing education, not education alone, the standard of living. Social empowerment and number of members in the family. It can have reverse. But when you want it to be in one direction, that unidirectional pathway in the experimental design is something which you look in terms of by taking conditions which are suitable for that. Say, for example, give you one more example and conclude, because let us take social science, sociology, say, for instance. Somebody wants to know the impact of family planning in a village. So they go to a village, they take the average size of the family. Size of the family is 14, 1-4, big size. So they give them all the family planning interventions. And for review after 5 years, they go to the same village and take the size of the family. And they're saying now it is 4. Size of the family is 4. Now, when the size of the family is 4, they're coming to a conclusion that family planning is very effective, because earlier it was 14, now it is 4. But only subsequently we realize that the whole thing happened because the whole thing changed, the actual change came place because the whole village was affected by tsunami. So there was another variable which came in tsunami, which was not studied, but its impact is actually there. So what do you do over here? The right methodology there was, you should not take the village as a whole. That is where I'm saying the experimental design. You must take two set of villagers who stay in the same village, who live under identical conditions, and you give this family planning interventions only in one group. That is called the experimental. The other is the control one. So if it was because of tsunami, the reduction would have been in both. So those are some of the methodologies. We are not going into the hardcore methodologies now. What I'm trying to say is these are the things which perhaps are things which can come as depart. So there are means through which you can, what do you call, keep them under control, if not perfectly under control. But there are ways to do it. That's what I'm trying to just put across. Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Then
you,
there
sir.
is, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Solutions and suggestions for our research problem. Yeah, we are talking about whether you can bring in solutions and see, when you start with a problem, you have identified an issue. As I said, in the case of headache, the question is relating to how do you come at the solutions and suggestions to our research problem. Now, if it is not that always you solve, you have done a research on a research issue, you can at least say that this is happening because of this and its implication is this much. Something has to be done to solve it. So when I'm saying solution, I'm not always saying everything should be solved. That's why I said solution, resolution, mitigation, lightening. Any of this must be done. Otherwise, what is happening? You're keeping the problem as such. You're just leaving it unaddressed. So if I cannot at least solve, I can say that this is one type of headache, a unique type of headache, which has got these implications. And perhaps within our kind of research, I cannot solve it. But I'm having light on what should be done. So that is where we are saying. So always, even when you're saying suggestions, it cannot be blanket. It can be something which you're talking about in terms of addressing it. So at least throwing light on it. But you cannot say that the problem is just standing like that. I finished my research. Nothing has happened to that. No solution, no resolution, no lightning, no light. It should not end in that part. That is what I was trying to put across. Thank you so much. Anything else anybody wants to raise? How will you ensure data quality? Okay, data quality and reduce plagiarism. Two things. How will you ensure the data quality? By looking at the source from where you're getting it. We have very developed data sources today. That's what I was saying, real-time data. You might have heard about primary data and secondary data. In addition to primary and secondary, we have something called real-time data. Real-time data are databases which continuously keeps updating itself. We have database on migration, we have database on income, savings of the people, on financial, which is updated maybe once in 30 days, once in 50 days. So we can reliably use that data and you can draw inferences. But the quality of data comes when you look at the purpose for which you're using it. So you should cross-check it. So you have to find out, maybe from, if you're saying primary data, you take one question, you put a dummy question or you put a disguised question in a reverse order, and then you try whether this person is giving a reliable data. So in primary data, there are means for it. In secondary data, based on what purpose you're trying to meet from it, you look at how it is actually capable of serving its purpose. So that is the quality. Plagiarism, yes, you have numerous softwares for it. All kinds of softwares are there, number of softwares which will tell you whether the data or this, whether it has been used. Data which is used earlier, you can again use it if it is for a different purpose, and if it is you're using it for your purpose, there's nothing wrong in it. So there are lots of technology embedded methods in it, like Drillbrit or all your Urkund, all these methods, there are prescribed formats for it, so you can use it. We have research methodology session from you sooner. We are planning. I think you are already there in a group, so maybe that the organizers will look into that later, and you can have more such sessions with the same group or with an enlarged group. But this session did not have hardcore methodology issues to be discussed. Our basic purpose is to create a genuine interest in research, a mindset for research. When that passion is there, rest of it is something which we can easily catch up with. So that's it, I think. Anything else?
One doubt.
Yeah, please.
So I'm a research scholar at St. Bergman's.
Yes.
So my doubt is, you mentioned about controlled variable. Sometimes
Yeah.
we use two terms, controlled variable and controlled variable. So first question is whether are both the same. Second part is, now if you take the example of sales, when you take the literature, there might be hundreds of possible independent variables. For the dependent variable sales, there could
Sure.
be hundreds of variables which might be influencing sales. So where do you draw the limit? Like, how do you say limit your
No. See, that is based on the purpose. Say, for instance, when we say sales and advertising and sales, say for instance, or you take any variable for that matter. Now, this might be, as you said, getting influenced by a number of variables, large number of variables, but all of them might not be relevant for your particular product. When I'm saying sales and advertising, it's not sales for any product and advertising of any nature. It is that's why we are saying context. I'm saying, say, for it is advertisement for FMCG, or it is advertisement for textiles. So when I'm specifying parameters, then the variables, still there will be number of variables, but the large variables will become a bit more smaller. So then you do tools to weed out the factors which have got a larger, dependency on your other variable, and you take those which have got a lesser difference. So initially, perhaps if you put it in a very wide term, the variables will be very large, and your direct dependence can be very difficult. But when you put it to a product, it becomes still lesser. When you put it to a context, to a particular place, it becomes still lesser. So you reduce it down and bring it to that place based on actually your purpose, what you're trying to do. Even then, in spite of all that is said, and then you can say before after comparison is one method to keep the other variables constant. Experimental control variable is another method to keep this constant. But then, even in spite of all this, that's what I said earlier to the question raised by Ankita. It is not something that you can do it with 100% perfection. Some element of error could be there in the case of your balancing process of this. So, but then definitely a larger variable at a wider scale that is there, that same might not be there at the levels when you put it in the context. So contextualizing in terms of your conceptual framework is where the limitation actually brings in. Okay. What are the different ways of there's another question on acquiring existing knowledge in a domain. That is what we do in literature review. For you, it is very easy. What are the different ways of acquiring existing knowledge in different domains? For me, it was not that easy 40 years back. If I look at my PhD 35 years back, because today you're using technology to understand domain-based knowledge. Latest, we're even using AI. So you give the domain, ask for all that has been said, everything which is available in a digital format. Now, most of the literature is available in a digital format or even in archives. You can get that literature, you can get what has been said over there, what has been produced over there. So it's very easy to get existing knowledge which is available in different domains and in different disciplines also. It's very easy. Suppose you just say, but only thing is your prompt should be correct. The way you search the literature, that should be very correct. If that is wrong, you will not get the right answer. Say, for example, somebody wants to do in behavioral or organization behavior, or say in market. If I just give marketing, it's so wide. So in marketing, what do you want? Are you talking about segmentation? Are you talking about sales promotion? Are you talking about product customization? So like that, you have to bring it down. So the domain, in that domain, everything will come down. So in a very, as I said earlier, when it is very wide, lots, it will be filled, you bring it down to a lower level. That is what is actually happening there.
Since we are running out of time, we'll just allow one more question. I think one participant has raised her hand. Shika,
yeah, please. Yeah, maybe this will be the, yeah. Okay, sure.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I have completed my post-graduation. Now I'm planning to do a PhD. So,
yeah. Which is your subject?
MCom
Graduation in finance.
Yes,
okay, MCom finance. Okay.
Sir, I want to know some basics.
Yeah.
That is, if, for example, if I'm trying to study the consumer behavior towards different marketing strategies, I mean, digital marketing, consumer behavior or consumer satisfaction in digital marketing.
Okay.
So my population is the consumers, right?
Yeah.
So how should I find the samples, like sampling technique? Which sampling technique should I use? I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, again, your questions are now, this question is slightly drifting towards the methodology part. Your idea is the population and the sample. I'm just answering this question, although it was not part of the coverage. You are saying consumers, and you want to study about consumers. Two things. One thing, you didn't ask that question, but I'm putting that also. You said you have done your MCom in finance, and you're talking about something in marketing, which is a different discipline, which is theoretically not wrong. But one important thing is, when I said have the funnel top, if you're doing something in consumer behavior and you do not have adequate backing in marketing, that might affect your research. So first thing is, you should have adequate marketing on the domain in which you're doing it. Even if you're in finance, you can do it, but you must get a backing in that. So somebody in finance, if you want to launch into marketing, if you believe that your marketing theory is not strong, you should grab that. That is number one. Second, your population sample issue. See, you can have two types of population, one where it is finite and the other one where it is not finite. So when it is finite, you can use probability-based sampling. Finite means the total population is known. Suppose I'm taking voters in a particular place, or I'm taking employees in a company. So then it is known. So I can use random sampling, probability-based sampling. But if I'm saying that, as you said, consumers, and there is no database of indicating how many consumers are there, then I cannot use probability-based method, because the population is unknown. And wherever population is unknown, then you can go, you can be purposive sampling, you can make judgment sampling, you can be purposive and say that consumers of these products at these income levels with a consumption pattern for this many years. That way you can become purposive when it is not known. So known population, unknown population has got two different sampling methods, and you have to accordingly use it based on whether the population is known or unknown. In your case that you said, it is an unknown population.